I have continued to watch the ongoing political races with great disgust. Let me preface my remarks by saying I am a registered Republican who was the state party chairman of a certain independent party who is a supporter of the Democratic presidential ticket. I found myself recently switching channels whenever I hear the Republican candidate go on the character attack against the Democratic candidate. When I ran for office a few years back, one of the points of my platform was that I would not run a smear campaign, but rather a campaign that was based solely upon the issues. So, what are some of the more important issues that the American people want to have answered by our candidates? I'm glad you asked that question, and here are just a few. First of all, in the face of a deficit that is completely out of control, which is amounting to well over $1 trillion for the first time in the history of our nation, this is certainly one of the most important issues that will be faced by the next president of the United States. Number two, we have a national debt that amounts to well over $10 trillion. That is another historical first. Number three, we're spending over $10 billion per month on an illegal war in Iraq. Number four, our military is stretched beyond its limits of tolerance. As you may know, our military once had a rule that it would not send members of the same family into combat situations at the same time. Today, we have husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, each serving together on the battlefields in foreign lands. Not necessarily serving at the same location, but they're on the ground at the same time. In fact, our military preparedness has gotten so bad that retirees are not being permitted to separate from the military. Leaves are being routinely canceled or repeatedly postponed. During the Vietnam conflict, American soldiers that were deployed served one mandatory 12-month tour of duty. Any subsequent tours were voluntary only. My own brother, for example, was drafted and sent directly to Pleiku, a city in Vietnam. He successfully served 1 year and then subsequently volunteered for one more tour of duty, serving a total of 2 years. Today, our soldiers are being forced to serve 2, 3, 4, and sometimes even more years. Number five, with respect to national security, a great number of laws have been enacted and passed without the knowledge or consent of the American people, and sometimes without the knowledge or consent of the United States Congress. Laws that have destroyed the very fabric of the United States Constitution, which, by the way, is the very foundation of those laws and of our freedoms. What's wrong with that picture? This represents a blatant affront to our national security, as well as the liberties that were won by our forefathers. Now, those are just a few of the major issues facing our nation today. With all of that being said, I want to take this opportunity to discuss one particular subject that has recently emerged on the campaign trail. The subject is socialism. To be honest, it takes me back to my high school days. To begin, let's take a look at the definition of socialism. Socialism is any one of various theories or systems of social organization in which the means of producing and distributing goods is owned collectively or by a centralized government that often plans and controls the economy. Before I continue, does that remind you of anything that has recently taken place with respect to our banks, the market, and the economy? For those of you who have short memories, the U.S. government recently took control over the largest insurance company on the planet, gave themselves the authority to lend what they called unlimited amounts of money to the central banks, the same ones that they purchased shares of, and they seized the 2 largest mortgage companies on the planet. Would you call that socialism? Anyway, let's continue with our definition. Socialists mainly share the belief that capitalism unfairly concentrates power and wealth among a small segment of society and controls capital and creates an unequal society. All socialists advocate the creation of an egalitarian society in which wealth and power are distributed more evenly. Although there is considerable disagreement among socialists over how and to what extent this could be achieved. On the other hand, for those that have or have had the belief that the United States was a capitalistic society, here's that definition. Capitalism is an economic system in which the means of production and distribution are privately or corporately owned, and development is proportionate to the accumulation and reinvestment of profits gained in a free market. Investments, distribution, income, production, and pricing of goods and services are predominantly determined through the operation of a free market where anyone can participate in supply and demand, and they can form contracts with each other rather than by central economic planning. Admittedly, prior to the Bush Gang's overthrow of our freedoms, our system probably was a capitalistic one. However, with the recent overthrow of the mortgage and banking industry, what remains cannot be labeled capitalistic, but rather has taken on the very distinct tenets of socialism.